Hey class, in this video we're going to expand on our area calculator project. We're going to enhance it and add an extra feature. So right now all our calculator does is print out the area calculation. Okay, so it's printing out the number 30 in our example here, but we're using HTML and we're drawing things on screen. Let's draw a rectangle that represents our shape. So we can stylize this a little bit neater. So instead of message here, this div message, let's call it box. And I'm going to come down to my document.query selector, and I'm going to change that to box. And I'll leave that as is for now, but I want to add some CSS. So let's go into CSS and let's select the div for box. Now right now, at the start of our program, there's nothing inside the box, so we can't see it. But let's add a border. So I'm gonna write a selector that selects the div with the ID of box. And the way we do that is hashtag box. So similar to the query selector, we use that hashtag symbol. And that's one of the fun things about using this method for selecting or for interacting with the DOM is that the selectors or the criteria that you put in here, the argument that you put in the parentheses for a query selector is the same kind of syntax we would use to select something with CSS. So you can sort of learn CSS and apply that knowledge to JavaScript, or vice versa. Okay, so we've got a hashtag box, and that's going to select that specific div. If I have other divs on the screen, it's not going to select those divs, just this one. And I can apply a border. Now border has, it's like one of these combination properties where it needs three things. It needs the width, the border width. It needs the color. So let's just make it black. And then it needs the style of the border. So we're going to use solid. And we can see that we've got this tiny little border on our page. It's like this, almost this little line showing up. And what I want to do is I want to hide that for right now. So there's nothing inside our border. And if I just run this program real quick, if I run 5 times 6, right now there's nothing inside our div. So the height is 0. And when I calculate the area, I can see that it expands. It opens up to fill the number 30. So I'm going to be using this to style the box. But right now, I'm going to set that border to 0. The border width is going to be 0. So we still have these two properties, black and solid, but the width is 0, and that makes it disappear. Okay, so now when I hit save, or I run this calculate area, we see the number 30, but there's no box around it. So what I'd like to do is change that. So now what I'm going to do here is in document.querySelector box, I actually am going to save this thing. Let's create a variable for the box. We'll just name it box. And we're going to just save it like that. So now it's going to be available to us inside our function. And we can access its properties. So let's say box.innerText equals A. And our program should work just like it did before. Well, let's try it. And it does, okay. But I can edit other things in the box, other properties of the box, like style. I can say box.style.border width equals 1px. Okay, so that changes that border width property to 1 pixel. And remember, the border width in CSS would be border dash width, but in JavaScript it's border capital W. Let's try this. And I can see 42, and now we can see our box again. Now, this is one way to set the style on an element in JavaScript, and I could write this multiple times for different properties. This is a pretty simple project, and what I'm going to do is use a different technique. So there's another property that I can access here, and that's called Css Text. So Css Text is a different property in that's accessible to me here, And what it's going to do is just replace the inline styles on the div with a new set of inline styles. And there's nothing in there. There's no style attribute given, so I can do that safely here. And instead of this technique with the straight quotes, what I'm actually going to do here is use backticks. So the backticks is a new way to make strings in JavaScript, and it's the symbol is next to the number 1 on your keyboard. In the quotes are no longer straight up and down; they're kind of on an angle here. And I'm going to press enter because when you use backticks, you can have strings that are on multiple lines. And now if I want to change the border width, I can actually use regular CSS like I was writing it in my CSS tab. So it's a slightly different syntax because I'm actually writing the CSS code and we're just going to insert it into the tag. Okay, so border width 1px, like that. This looks just like regular CSS. And if I try this program, I can see that it worked. And let's actually start printing it out. So we have a debug here for our program here, this console.log. Let's do that again down here, console.log, and we will log the box so that we can see really what's happening with our property manipulation here. So let's try this again, 5 and 6, calculate area. And so I can see, okay, we got 30. And now I can see the div has the style border width 1 pixel. Okay. Let's take this width and height or length and height, I guess, and let's use it in our style sheet here. So I can actually say, let's make the width, let's make it, I guess, 5 pixels, and let's make the height 6 pixels, like that. And let's see what that does. So when I type in 56 and 60, when I calculate the area, I can see I've got a really small box, and then the numbers are, they're running outside of it. So if I look at what printed out in the console, I can see that the border width is there like before, but I also have width 5 pixels and height 5 pixels. Now what I'd like to do is make the width and height actually come from this length and height here. And I realize I'm using length instead of width, so let's just change that. Let's change this L to W, and instead of length, let's actually change it to width, and we'll go and adjust our HTML, and we'll just refactor this. So let's call this width, and the name, oh boy, this is everywhere, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it here, and then control click in all these spaces here where we have the word length. I can just type in both spaces at once. So let's write width like that. Now I didn't do it up here because I want a capital W. Okay, so now all that stuff says width, and I've got to come down here and double check that this is correct, and it's not. I have L and H here. Let's just change this to W again. This to W, and this is just to keep our code like super consistent. I could have left that as L and it would have worked fine, but just for the sake of this video, we're gonna make sure that all our code is consistent, because when we're debugging it, which inevitably we're gonna have problems, keeping your variable names and your code consistent is just gonna go a long way towards finding your errors quicker. Okay, so one last try. Let's do 50 and 100. And when I calculate the area, I can see that I've got 5,000, but the box is still really small because it's 5 pixels and 6 pixels. What I'd like to do is use the width and the height here. And I can do that. So where this number is, I'm actually going to replace it with $ curly bracket. And because we're using the backticks, inside these curly brackets, we can actually put JavaScript. I could put like 5 times 8 and this math, JavaScript would compile this math. But I don't want to do that. What I'd like to do is use the variable. So the variable for width is W, the variable for height is H. I'm going to delete the number 6 because it would have made whatever I typed in, and then it would have joined it with the number 6. That wouldn't have worked. Okay, 50, and then 100. And when I calculate the area, I can see I have a little box. So this is going to represent the area or the rectangle that I just plugged into my width and height. We could add more stuff here, so we could actually add some other text around the box to, you know, show the width and the height. Let's add some CSS in here. So let's add a margin of 100. No, that's too much. 20 pixels. And that pushed my box away from the edge. And now I can add a little piece of text here. Well, let's add it inside the box. So let's add three more divs in here. So I'm going to put div times 3. Okay, now we'll add IDs to these divs, and we'll call the first one, oh, I can't use length and height because I've already used that. So one important thing to note here is that ID values are unique. So I cannot say width, but I can say W because I haven't used W up here as an ID. Let's use ID A for the area, and let's use the ID H for the height. So width, area, and height. And actually I think that I'm going to just move that up there like that. Okay, so width, height, and area. Now I have those objects inside the box. I'm still selecting the box, but this box.innerText is no longer going to work. So the box has another div inside it for the A tag, or not the A tag, rather the ID of A. So I actually want to put the area inside that. So I can do that by saying box dot query selector, and I'm going to search the box for hashtag A, and then set the inner text to the A variable. Let's just try this. 4 and 5, and I can see that 20 worked, and here it is down here, the whole box printed out, and I can see that the div with the ID of A has 20 inside of it. So we can actually use query selector on things other than just document. I can go and get a whole bunch of HTML, and then I can run query selector against that to look for things that are inside of that object. Now let's go ahead and use this technique for the width and height. So let me copy this, and I'm just going to paste it and paste it. And then what I'm going to do here is control click over here, and we'll do width, and we're going to control click here, and we'll do height. Okay, so let's try this. We'll do 50 and 100, and I'll calculate the area, and I can see that all those numbers are populating now. And I can write CSS to move the W and move the H so that they're, you know, on the top and on the left. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. I think we have some time. So we have our box, and we can write selectors for hashtag A, hashtag H, and hashtag W. So let's do W first. And what I want to do is I want to set the display property, or rather a property we haven't used yet in these videos called position. So position, for the box, I'm going to type relative. And what that means is the box is going to be positioned exactly where it is now. Like, it's not going to change. It's just relative to everything else on the page. But by setting it here, by actually writing it out, it means that the objects that are inside it are going to get the position of this box as the 0 origin point. Now that's weird. Let me back up a moment. So let me comment that out, and we're going to set position of the W absolute. So this is a different property, and position absolute. You can see that the value there moved. Is, let's say, left 0 and top 0. Okay, so notice that 50 is way up here in the corner. So the 0 origin, 0, 0 coordinate, right, x and y, is all the way up here in the corner of my page. And that means that the whole document is the context, called the position context, for like everything else. And when I use absolute, position absolute, it's relative to, or not relative to, it's going to be the context uses the document for the origin point. Okay, now if I uncomment this line of code, this position relative, now 0, 0 is actually, the 0 origin point is actually this box. And if I want to move it a little higher, I can say, let's just say negative 10 pixels, and let's see what happens. Oh, it's moving up. Okay, so good, that's what we want. Let's go 20 pixels. There we go. And now let's do the same thing for the height. Let's set the position to absolute. And with absolute positioning, we can say, okay, I want this element to go in exactly this spot. So left, we'll just do 0, and top, we can do 0 just to kind of get our bearings. And then on left, I'm going to say minus 20 pixels. Oops, extra semicolon there. Okay, so 100 is moving out there. So let's move it a little more. Let's do 30 pixels. There we go. And it looks like it's a little close to my edge, so let's increase the margin to 30 pixels. There we go. And now, what if I want 50 to be moved over a little bit? Well, we can do that. We can adjust our left. Let's say 10 pixels. We'll move it over. There it goes. And then our top for the H, we can move that down. Let's move it down 50 pixels. There it goes. Okay, but we have a problem here, and the problem is that if we use these numbers here with position absolute, and then we try a different size here, and we calculate the area, the 100, it doesn't move over. It's just kind of stuck there on the left, and we've only moved it 10 pixels. So it's not really the best way to do it. Let's make this a little bit better so that the label here for this width, it always moves to the center of the box, and we can do that. But the easiest way to do it is to add add a background color. So if I add a background color, and we'll just add it blue, I can sort of see the box around it. That's really dark. Let's go to yellow. Okay, so I can see it's too light. Okay, cornflower blue it is. Okay, now I can see the word 100 and I can see the shape. So what this shows me is the actual position of my number 100, and if it was 1,000, I'd see the box. Okay, and what I can do here is let's just set left to 0 so that it moves back over to the edge, and then let's adjust the width to be 100%, and it's going to grow to be 100% of the parent. So even though it's outside of the box that's being drawn here, it is still it's still a child because it's inside the div here. And now the box grew 100%. And if I make this 1,000 and calculate the area, I can see that it's way bigger, and it goes all the way to the edge. Okay, so how can I center the text in there? really easily with, it's called text align is the property, and it's how you center things. It's how you center text in CSS. So I can just say center, and the number should be in the middle, and there it is. Okay, so that was easy. Well, what about the 100 on the side here? How can we get that in the center? Well, let's try and let's take our background color and actually move that down so it's in the H. And now we can see the shape there. Now left 30 is fine, this negative 30 pixels, but if I make the height 1000 and calculate the area, now that 0 is running into the box, so I don't like that. Let's actually use 100% and see what that does. So if I say left 100%, it moves all the way over here to the other side of the box, so it's 100% of the width of the box. What if I do right 100%? So now it's on the edge, and if I change the width to 1000 and calculate it again, whoops, wrong one, the height to 1000 and calculate it, I can see that it just kind of moves over to the left, which is nice. Okay, so finally, how do we center it? So that's great. We can move it to the left, but how do I center it top to bottom? Okay, so we've got top 50, and that's how it is getting pushed down. If I say top 0, it should go back to the top of the screen, or the top of the box, and then I'm going to set the height to 100%. And again, this is going to be 100% of the parent. Oops, there we go. And that filled that. But how do we move this down? Text align centers the text left and right. And we don't need to do that here. We want to vertically align it. So what we're going to do is use display flex. So flexbox is like just super useful for centering things. And the property that we need to use to display vertically is align items, and we're going to choose center for our option there, and now we can see 100 is centered. So we've got the width and the height nicely centered around our box. But what about the area here? The area is not centered in the middle of our box. Okay, so let's fix that. Let's go up to our box. This is the parent, remember? And we can change the display for the box. Let's set the display property for the box to flex. Okay, and then we're going to adjust the left and right, so we can center this thing left and right by using justify content, and we'll center that, and then we will center it vertically with align items. And there we go, that's in the middle now. Okay, let me get rid of my background color here. There it is. Now it would be nice to have a little bit of space there. So let's say I like that it's positioned to the left, but I want a little bit of margin around this thing. Well, margin's the wrong property to change. What I need to do is adjust this right property. I need to move it over a little bit more. And in CSS, we can do mixed unit calculation with a function called calc. So if I use calc, I can put a math problem inside of it in CSS, like 100% plus, let's do 3 pixels, whatever that's going to be. And I can see that it calculates that for me. So it moved the 100 over, 100%, and an additional 3 pixels. Okay, so that is how we center our labels. Okay, one last thing I want to do to make this look real good is I want to add some labels to my labels. So I have 100 and 100, but there's nothing here that tells me what these things are. So what if I wanted to put W:100 and then H:100 and then area or A:100? Like I wanted to label these things. Well, there's a thing in CSS that would work really well for this, and that's called Pseudo Elements. So let's select my W class again, or the W ID again, and I'm going to add 2 colons like that, and I'm going to write the word before. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a pseudo element in front of the 100 here. Or let me just change this to 200 so that we have different numbers being displayed. Okay, so in front of the 200, I want to add a W. So I can write the property content, and in quotes, I'm going to put W and then a colon like that. And now I can see W showing up. And now over here on for the height, I need to select the height ID and add a pseudo selector or a pseudo element. And again, content is going to be H. There it is. Now, of course, my margin is off again, so I need to add a little bit more margin. Maybe the thing to do would be to actually center this in the viewport, which we could do. And then finally, let's take the A and let's add a pseudo element for that before, and content is going to be A. Oh, let me add the colon. Okay, so there we go. So we have the W is 200, the height is 100, and the area is 20,000. Okay, so our little calculator here, if I change this to 150, the positioning of these elements is just going to flow really well here. So just going to automatically adjust so that everything is centered inside my my box or relative to my box. And if I want to add a space, I can do that. Here we go. Just needed to add that inside my strings here. Okay, so this is how we create our little area calculator in Codepen using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We wrote a lot of code today, and this is one of our longer videos. So if you have errors or bugs that you can't solve or that you're struggling with, please feel free to leave a comment. I'd be happy to help. Include a link to your Codepen. And while you're at it, go ahead and like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.